You ever look back at old photos and wonder how you ended up where you are now? Sometimes I do, and honestly, it's surreal. I'm Eric Martina, the guy in the flannel shirt with grease under his nails, the one always willing to fix your alternator on a Sunday afternoon if you brought over some decent barbecue. But back then, I was just another college kid, running mostly on caffeine, cheap pizza, and hope. I met Jenny during my sophomore year at the University of Texas in Austin. It was fall, and the campus was buzzing football games, late-night study sessions, half the students pretending to care about chemistry while really caring about who was sitting 2 rows over. Jenny was hard to miss. She had this laugh that made people turn their heads, not loud, just warm. You know the type. Big blue eyes, a little curly brown hair that she always tried to straighten but never really needed to, and a smile that said, "I know something you don't." She was the type of person everyone wanted to sit next to, the kind who made you feel smarter just by association. We first talked at a campus poetry slam, believe it or not. I'd shown up as a wingman for my roommate, and Jenny was there to support her best friend. We got to talking about everything but poetry cars, food, music, our mutual fear of public speaking. She said she liked my hands, all calloused from summers working at my uncle's garage. I said she had a Texas accent that could sell ice to an Eskimo. I'm not saying it was love at first sight, but it was close. We started seeing each other almost every day, walking along the river, grabbing breakfast tacos from the food truck by the quad, cramming for midterms in the library. She was an English major, could quote more Shakespeare than our professor, and I was slogging through business classes while dreaming of opening my own shop. 3 months in, something just clicked. Maybe it was after that late-night drive out to Lake Travis, when my old Honda broke down and we ended up watching the sunrise on the hood, talking about life, dreams, and where we'd want to be at 40. There was a moment, right there, where I knew this is my person. This is the woman I want beside me, whether I'm flat, broke, or building a mansion. By the end of that semester, we were inseparable. Our friends joked about how you'd never see one of us without the other. Some called it puppy love, but to me, it felt like finding home for the first time. We graduated in the spring, me with a degree that said I was ready for business, as if anyone ever really is. Jenny with her teaching credential. We didn't have money for a big wedding, so we got married under an old oak tree in her parents' backyard. Just family, a handful of friends, and enough barbecue to feed a football team. I wore a suit my brother swore was 2 sizes too big. Jenny wore her mother's dress. It wasn't fancy, but it was us. We pooled what little money we had, scraped together a down payment, and bought a modest house in the suburbs just outside Austin. Nothing special, a one-story, with squeaky floors, a yard that always needed mowing, and a garage that I saw as the seed for my future business. Jenny started teaching English at the local high school. It suited her. She had patience for days, and a way of making even the most disinterested teenager at least pretend to care about poetry. She brought home stacks of essays and stories for me to read. And I'll admit, sometimes I only half listened, but I loved hearing her talk about her students, their dreams, and the way she rooted for the underdogs. As for me, I finally opened my own auto repair shop on the edge of town. It wasn't mucha couple lifts, some hand-me-down tools, and a neon sign that buzzed more than it glowed. But folks in our neighborhood knew me as Eric the Mechanic, and business picked up. I got to know people, their cars, their problems, their secrets. In a place like Austin, your mechanic hears it all. Our life together was nothing fancy, but it felt solid. We made new traditions. Friday night tacos, Sunday mornings at the flea market, road trips to the hill country. We made plans for kids, but life kept throwing curveballs. Work got busy. The shop needed expanding. Jenny started night classes for her masters. Still, we dreamed about it, joked about what we'd name them, fought over which football team our future kid would root for. Jenny was the glue in our social circle, always the first to plan a dinner, host a game night, or bring a pie to the neighbors. She remembered everyone's birthdays, made everyone feel welcome. If I'm honest, I depended on her for that. She made our house feel alive, like the kind of place people wanted to be. Looking back, I realize I took a lot of that for granted. It's funny how, when things seem perfect, you assume they'll always stay that way. You don't notice the little cracks, or maybe you just don't want to. Back then, though, I thought we had it all figured out. I thought I was the luckiest man in Texas, solid job, loving wife, plans for the future. If someone had told me how fast all of that could turn upside down, I would have laughed it off. But life, as I learned, has a dark sense of humor. The thing about running your own shop is, you don't really get time off in the summer. Winter's slow season for cars in Texas, so that's when Jenny and I would usually take our vacation. We'd close the shop, she'd get a break from lesson plans, and we'd head somewhere warm to shake off the January chill. This year, Jenny was the one who pushed for a trip. "It'll be good for us," she said, her voice a little too bright, like she was already trying to convince herself. "We haven't really had time, just the two of us, in ages. You're always working, and I'm always grading essays. Let's do something fun." something big. I'll admit, things between us had felt routine lately. Nothing dramatic, just the usual grind of jobs and bills and half-finished house projects. Still, I wanted to believe it was just a phase. A reset sounded good. So I booked us a week at a resort in the Caribbean, something I'd never done before. Jenny lit up when I told her, even hugged me like she used to back in college. I felt hopeful. Funny how life gives you a little hope right before it pulls the rug out from under you. The first weird moment was at the airport. We were standing in line to check our bags at Austin Bergstrom, and Jenny's on her phone, texting so fast her thumbs were a blur. I noticed this guy standing a few feet ahead of us, about my age, a little too tan for January in Texas, expensive suitcase, Bluetooth earpiece. He gave off that slick car salesman vibe, confident, a little too eager to be noticed. Jenny glanced up, caught his eye, and for a split second, I saw something pass between them. Not a big thing, not some movie-style wink or anything, just a look, a half smile. Maybe I imagined it, but I swear, I felt it in my gut. Once we got through security, Jenny pulled me toward a coffee shop. She said she needed caffeine before she'd even consider sitting on a plane. We sat, but she barely touched her latte, still glued to her phone. I tried to shake off the airport moment, tell myself I was being stupid. I'm not the jealous type and ever have been. But there was something in the air that I couldn't put my finger on. When it was time to board, Jenny stopped me at the gate. "Hey, you don't mind if we switch seats, do you?" She usually insisted on the window, said it helped with her flying nerves. "I think the aisle's better for my legs," she said. "And, just in case I need to get up." "Sure," I said. She squeezed my arm, but her eyes darted to the other side of the boarding area. Guess who was standing there? Mr. Tan Suitcase, pretending not to watch us. I tried to laugh it off, but my mind started running lap. Maybe they just looked at each other. Maybe she just wanted the aisle. Maybe. Isn't it wild how the brain fills in the gaps when you're anxious? On the flight, she put her headphones in, closed her eyes, and didn't say two words the whole way to Miami. I watched her as she slept. At least, I thought she was sleeping. Every now and then, her phone would light up in her lap. She'd peek, type a quick reply, slip it back under her sweater. By the time we landed and switched planes, I was on edge. I'd booked us a window seat for the next leg. But again, Jenny asked for the aisle. "It's nothing," she said, but her voice was thin, distracted. Once more, she was glued to her phone, barely talking to me except to ask for a bottle of water. I told myself, "You're overthinking. You're just tired. You've been married almost 12 years. She wouldn't do anything crazy." But the feeling wouldn't go away. It followed me all the way through customs in the Bahamas, followed us to the car rental desk, and all the way to the hotel lobby. That night, we had a room with a view of the ocean, but Jenny sat on the balcony, tapping away at her phone. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just texting my sister," she said, but she didn't look up. I stared out at the water, trying to convince myself that the whole point of this trip was to reconnect. But even on the first night, it felt like I was already losing her own text message at a time. Looking back, maybe I should have asked more questions. Maybe I should have trusted my gut. But the truth is, when you love someone, you give them the benefit of the doubt even when it starts to hurt. I guess I just didn't want to believe what my instincts were telling me. Not yet. You ever get that feeling in your chest, the kind you get right before a tornado, when the air goes still and every part of you is just waiting for something to go wrong? That's how I felt the first morning at the resort. Maybe it was the jet lag. Maybe it was the way Jenny was acting, smiling at her phone and brushing me off every time I tried to pull her back into vacation mode. We'd barely unpacked. I tried to keep things normal, suggested breakfast by the pool, maybe a swim, a long walk on the sand like we used to do before life got in the way. Jenny said her stomach was upset. "I think I'm coming down with something. I'll just stay in, maybe take a nap. You go enjoy yourself, Eric." I wanted to believe her, but something was off. Even her voice sounded like it was coming from the next room, not the next pillow. I ended up wandering the resort alone for an hour, trying to shake off the feeling. The place was gorgeous palm trees, a pool with blue tiles, sunlight everywhere, but I couldn't enjoy a damn thing. And that's when I saw a Mr. Tan Suitcase from the airport. He was sitting at the pool bar, sunglasses on, grinning at the bartender. I felt a cold rush in my chest, but told myself it was just coincidence. About 30 minutes later, as I was heading back toward our room, I cut through a side garden, and maybe the universe wanted me to see it. Maybe I just have lousy luck. I spotted Jenny coming down the path from the other side. She wasn't alone. She was with him. They were laughing, her hand brushing his arm like they'd known each other for years. Not just a friendly, "Hey, we met on the plane" vibe. Closer than that. He leaned in, whispered something. She looked up at him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since our first dates. I ducked behind a palm, heart in my throat. They stopped walking. He put a hand on her waist rail, familiar, and she didn't move away. Then she glanced around, and for a second, I was sure she'd spotted me. but she just adjusted her sunglasses, said something quick, and they headed off toward the beach. I wanted to storm over, wanted to grab her, grab him, make a scene, but something held me back. Call it pride, call it shock. Instead, I just watched them go, feeling like I'd left my own body behind. I walked back to our room, barely seeing the sunlight or the white sand. I just kept replaying what I'd seen. When I got inside, Jenny was there, changing into fresh clothes. "Feeling any better?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "A little," she said, eyes down. "Just needed some air. Still feel kinda rough, though." She barely looked at me, busying herself with her suitcase, then grabbing her phone. I tried to act normal. Went to shower, let the water run hot, trying to wash the pit out of my stomach. When I came out, Jenny was in bed, facing away from me, phone in hand. She fell asleep fast, but I heard her phone buzz more than once. I stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning. I'd always trusted Jenny, always. But now, my gut wouldn't let it go. I waited until her breathing slowed and got quiet. She'd always been a heavy sleeper, especially after a day in the sun. I slipped out of bed and, for the first time in my life, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. There wasn't even a password change. She must have felt too safe. Or maybe she wanted to get caught, deep down. First thing I see, a string of texts with Chris D. It took my brain a second, but yeah, Chris with a K, but spelled Chris. The guy from the airport, the guy from the pool. My jaw locked up as I scrolled. "Chris, you almost got us caught, Jen." Jenny, "Eric's clueless, don't worry. Meet me at the lobby in 10? Chris, you know I can't wait to see you. Last night was amazing. You make vacation worth it." Then her, Jenny, "Told Eric I'm sick. He'll probably go check out the beach. Come to my room after 2? Chris, "You got it, babe. I'll bring the wine." My hands were shaking. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I took screenshots, sent them to my own email. Some part of me knew I'd need proof, no matter how much it hurt. She had whole threads with him weeks back, months maybe. Some messages about missing each other, about getting away from boring old routines. I'd never seen her write like that. She even made jokes about how I was always working on cars and wouldn't notice if the house burned down. You know what the weirdest part is? I wasn't even angry at first. It was this kind of dull, freezing sadness, like someone just flipped a switch and turned my whole life off. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, just listening to her breathe. She started snoring lightly oblivious. I almost laughed. Here I was, barely able to see straight, and she's sleeping like a baby, plotting to meet her lover while I paid for the vacation. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the ocean. 12 years together, and this is how it ends? A few texts, a handshake at an airport, a lie about feeling sick. I wanted to believe it was just a mistake, but the proof was right there in my hand. That's when the anger finally caught up. And I knew no matter how this played out, nothing would ever be the same. You ever have one of those moments when your life splits? Like, there's a before and an after, and you're stuck on the line between forced to pick a side. That's how I felt, standing in that hotel room with Jenny sleeping a few feet away, and her phone, full of lies, burning a hole in my hand. The old me would have lost, it would have stormed out, blown everything up, demanded answers right then and there. But the shock did something strange. It made me cold, methodical. If Jenny was going to treat our marriage like a game, I figured I might as well learn the rules. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I put her phone back, careful to leave no sign I'd touched it, and I started thinking about what came next. Let me be clear, I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. What I wanted, what I needed, was proof, not just for me, but for whatever mess was coming. I'd read enough stories to know that in divorce court, the guy who comes in swinging usually leaves with nothing but bills and bruises. If I was going to fight, I'd have to fight smart. The next morning, Jenny felt better. Said maybe we should go out, get some sun, try to enjoy the trip. She was overcompensating, too cheerful, too quick to change the subject whenever I got close to any talk about us. I played along. All the while, I watched her, learned her tells. Every time her phone buzzed, she'd glance at it, hiding a little smile. Every time she disappeared to call her sister or run to the gift shop, she'd freshen her makeup and check her hair. That's when I started documenting everything. Thank God for smartphones and that old GoPro I'd thrown in my luggage, hoping to catch a few snorkeling videos. When Jenny told me she was heading down to the pool alone to read for a while, I waited a minute, then followed camera in my shirt pocket, set to record. I kept my distance, blending in with the other tourists. And sure enough, within 10 minutes, Chris showed up. They sat at the far end of the pool, drinks in hand, legs touching, laughing way too loud for two people who'd just met. I got footage. Plenty of it. That afternoon, Jenny said she needed a nap too much sun. I waited 10 minutes, then slipped out and circled around the hotel grounds until I spotted her on the patio outside Chris's room. More video. This time, I even managed to capture audio, snippets of their voices talking about how Eric has no clue, how this was the perfect trip, how they had to be careful the next couple days. At one point, Chris joked, "What if he finds out?" Jenny just laughed cold, nervous, and said, "He never pays attention." Not really. Well, guess I proved her wrong. By that night, I was sitting in our room, staring at hours of footage and a mountain of screenshots. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I needed more. More proof, more leverage, something airtight. If this ended up in court, I'd need every angle covered, especially since Jenny could spin any story to her advantage, and I wasn't about to get painted as the bad guy. So I kept going. Every time she snuck out, every little rendezvous, I logged IT dates, times, places, conversations. I even set up my phone to record calls when she thought I was asleep. It felt dirty, like I was running a sting operation against my own wife. But after what I'd seen, I knew I couldn't just rely on hope or second chances. Honestly, there were moments I wanted to rip the Band-Aid off, just end it, confront them both in the middle of the lobby. But I pictured her, in court, playing the hurt wife, and me as some angry lunatic. I couldn't give her that. Instead, I started mapping out the real endgame. How would this play when we got home? How could I make sure Jenny didn't walk away with everything: my house, my business, my savings? If Chris really wanted her, he could have her. But not my life, not the future I'd built. I called Tom, my brother, told him things weren't right but kept the details vague. Asked him to hang on to some files for me just in case. I reached out to a local Austin lawyer, a buddy of a buddy, and scheduled a consult for as soon as we got back. Every part of me wanted to scream, to break something, to rewind life 12 years. But I held it in. I watched. I recorded. I prepared. If Jenny and Chris wanted to play with fire, I was going to make sure I wasn't the one getting burned. You know what they say? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Never thought I'd be applying that rule to my own wife. But there I was, acting like everything was just fine, while inside, my blood was boiling. I knew I had to keep up the act. If Jenny or Chris caught even a whiff of what I knew, they'd start covering their tracks. And if this was going to end on my terms, I needed them to feel safe at least for a little while longer. So I turned up the clueless husband routine, smiled more, offered to get drinks, listened to her talk about books and the Texas weather. I even suggested we try the resort's couples massage. You deserve to relax, I told her, as if I actually believed she needed a break from me. But Jenny had her own ideas about how to spend her days. She kept making excuses to go for walks, or check out the gift shop, or FaceTime her sister back home. It was like watching someone try to sneak out of a movie theater during the credits. Awkward, clumsy, and way too obvious. That's when I had an idea. Give her exactly what she wanted, a free pass. So I booked her a day at the resort's fancy spa. Real treat, I told her. Go on, Jenny, you've earned it. I'll be fine on my own for a few hours. She looked at me a little sideways, probably wondering if I was serious. But I just grinned and handed her the reservation card. She actually hugged me. I almost laughed. Guess I deserved an Oscar for playing the world's most forgiving husband. As soon as she left, I sprang into action. I wasn't going to waste a single minute of her relaxation. First, I checked her messages again. Same code, same story. Her and Chris making plans, trading inside jokes, talking about how Eric's busy at the shop or probably won't notice a thing. But then I saw something that made me stop cold. Chris wasn't just texting Jenny. No, this guy was running some kind of sick side hustle, flirting with other women at the resort, and not all of them were single. There were photos, winks, little rendezvous set up in the bar and the gym. The guy even had a group chat going, full of inside jokes and not so subtle winks. I realized Chris was a pro at this. Jenny wasn't his first, and she definitely wouldn't be his last. Part of me wanted to burst out laughing at the irony here was my wife, convinced she was having some epic, secret romance, while Chris was playing her like a tourist at a rigged carnival game. So what did I do? I started collecting photos, videos, screenshots. I set my phone to audio record every time I walked past the pool bar or the hallways near Chris's room. I even found a way to get footage of Chris cozying up with a brunette from the tennis courts who, as I found out, was on vacation with her husband. It became clear Jenny was just one pawn on Chris's chessboard. And suddenly, I wasn't just fighting for my own pride. I was building a case that would take them both down if I needed it. By the time Jenny floated back from her spa session, face glowing, hair done, smelling like lavender and eucalyptus, I'd already sent files to a backup drive and emailed the most damning evidence to my brother, Tom, with a simple note. Open if anything happens to me. She smiled, thanked me, said it was exactly what she needed. For a second, I almost believed, or almost convinced myself this was still my Ginny, not some stranger wrapped in a borrowed robe. But inside, I was already moving my pieces. If this was a chess game, I just sacrificed a pawn. But the next moves? Those were mine. And I'll be honest, when you hit that point where you're done being the fool, it's amazing how clear everything becomes. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but honestly, by the time that Caribbean sun set, I was ready to serve it however I could. Maybe it wasn't noble, but after days of watching Ginny and Chris treat me like a background extra in my own life, I figured I'd earned a little payback. Here's how it went down. Ginny came back from the spa glowing, acting sweet as pie, and telling me how relaxed she felt. I played the part, offered to take her out dancing at the beach bar, even cracked a joke about one last wild night before we settled down again. She agreed a little too quickly, her eyes already flicking to her phone. I knew exactly who she was texting. After dinner, I told her I needed to run to the room and would meet her at the bar in 20 minutes. Instead, I swung by the hotel's gift shop, grabbed 2 bottles of water, and made a pit stop at the room Chris was staying in. Don't ask how I got his spare key. It's amazing what a $20 bill and a good story will do at a tourist resort. Once inside, I got to work. First, I found the little stash of sleeping pills Ginny kept for her migraines. It took 2 seconds to split them up and dissolve them into the water bottles. Then I left the bottles in their favorite spot by the bar, right next to their seat zone for Ginny, one for Chris. A little bonus. I'd heard them joke about staying hydrated, so I knew they'd go for it. Next, I ducked back to our room, grabbed my camera, and found a good vantage point. From the shadows, I filmed the reunion Ginny and Chris clinking glasses, laughing, slipping away from the crowd just like every other night. Except this time, they were both getting drowsier by the minute. It was almost poetic. Ginny tried to look flirty, but within half an hour, she was slurring her words. Chris, always so smooth, started blinking hard, trying to stay upright. I watched them stumble off toward Chris's room, arms around each other, both thinking they'd just scored another secret rendezvous. Instead, I waited 5 minutes, then followed quiet as a ghost. By the time I opened the door, Ginny was face down on the bed, shoes still on, and Chris was sprawled out on the couch, mumbling nonsense. Both of them out cold. That's when I went to work. I grabbed Ginny's purse, Chris's wallet and passport, both their phones, anything valuable or embarrassing I could find. I forwarded every text, every photo, every secret message from their phones straight to their families, their friends, their bosses. One big blast of truth, courtesy of the world's most betrayed husband. For Ginny, I sent the whole mess to her sister, her parents, even her teacher friends. For Chris, I sent his greatest hits, including a few photos with women he clearly shouldn't have been messaging to his wife back home. Yeah, turns out he was married too. What a surprise. I tossed their wallets and passports into the hotel safe, changed the codes, and sent the new info to myself for safekeeping. I wasn't about to commit a crime, but I was making damn sure they'd have a miserable time explaining all this at checkout. Before I left, I scrawled a note for both of them. Hope you enjoyed your vacation. Some things can't be fixed. E. Walking back to my own room, I felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. I wasn't proud of stooping to their level. But sometimes, when you get pushed off a cliff, you're allowed to throw a rock or two on the way down. As I lay in bed, listening to the distant sound of waves, I wondered how long it would take before the fallout started. I figured by morning, the news would be making its way through every group chat, every email inbox, every circle of friends back in Austin, and I'd be ready for whatever came next. Because I knew after this night, nothing would ever be the same for any of us. Morning hit the resort with its usual sun and chatter, but for me, it felt like the aftermath of a hurricane-estranged calm, but wreckage everywhere. I barely slept that night. My mind ran through 1,000 what-ifs, but my plan was set. This time, I wasn't sticking around for the fallout. I packed before sunrise, careful not to make a sound. Every shirt, every charger, every paper with my name on it gone from the drawers and closets. My phone buzzed a few times calls from Ginny's sister, a few from unknown numbers. Word was spreading, no doubt. Before I left the room, I made sure of 3 things. First, I double-checked that Ginny and Chris's wallets, cash, cards, and passports were stashed away where they'd never find them. I left their phones plugged in with dead batteries, the charging cables missing. Second, I checked the evidence. My backups of every video, every text thread, every photo stored in the cloud, on my laptop, and on a drive I'd mailed to Tom back in Austin. Third, I queued up one last bit of digital fireworks. All the videos and photos I'd captured every secret meeting, every moment of betrayal set to send out to Ginny and Chris's contact lists with a single tap. I left out anything too explicit, but what I sent was more than enough for the truth to hit home. To Ginny's family and a few of her friends, I included a simple note. Sorry you had to see this, but you deserve to know. I paused at the door, looked around that hotel room one last time. The sheet still held her perfume, and there was one of Jenny's hair ties on the floor. I picked it up, then dropped it right in the trash. Checking out at the front desk, I put on my best poker face and told them we had an emergency at home. No questions, no drama. The staff just wished me luck and called a taxi. As I pulled away from the resort, I felt the weight of everything, not just the suitcase in the trunk, but the end of 12 years, and the realization that I'd never be that trusting guy again. By the time my flight took off, the messages had all gone out. I imagined the shockwaves, Jenny's parents reading the truth over their morning coffee, Chris's wife realizing her husband's business trip was just another lie. Somewhere back at the resort, two people were waking up, broke, stranded, and very much alone and no money. No ID, no more secrets. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt empty, tired, but free in a way I hadn't been since those first innocent years with Jenny. My plan for a complete break was simple. Start over, no looking back. No more second chances, no more explaining or forgiving things that never should have happened. As the plane banked west, I closed my eyes, letting the hum of the engine drown out the noise of the last week. This chapter was over. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim or a fool. I was done. Landing back in Austin felt like surfacing from a long, underwater nightmare. My whole life before the trip felt like it belonged to another guy. But as the cab turned down our old street, my mission was crystal clear. Whatever was left of us was done for good. I didn't waste a minute. The second I dropped my bags in the empty living room, I grabbed a notebook and started my checklist. Anything that had hours stamped on it was on the chopping block. Furniture? Listed online. TV, sound system, that patio set Jenny loved? Gone by sundown. Every shared bank account got closed within the hour. I transferred what was mine to a new account under my name, leaving nothing for Jenny to find if she tried to come crawling back. I canceled joint credit cards, changed all the passwords, even switched the Wi-Fi just for the satisfaction. Packing up the last of my things, I called a moving service to take everything to a storage unit on the far side of town. What little Jenny had left her art prints, old clothes, trinkets, went into boxes labeled with her maiden name, stacked in the garage. If she wanted them, she could have them, but she'd have to come get them herself. But the house? That was my real act of closure. I knew she'd try to fight for it in any divorce, so I made sure it wouldn't be worth the trouble. No, I didn't do anything crazy, nothing illegal, nothing to actually damage it. But I did pull every last personal touch that made it a home. Took down all the photos. Painted over the accent walls she spent hours agonizing over. Replaced the locks. I even drained the pool, shut off the appliances at the breaker, and left instructions with the utility company to switch everything into my name. For the finishing touch, I put a "For Sale by Owner" sign on the lawn and let the realtor know the place was empty and ready for showing, just not ready for anyone to move in, at least not for a while. It was a shell, just 4 walls and a roof, no memories left, nothing left to fight over. I gave my new address to only 3 people, my brother Tom, my lawyer, and the moving company. Everyone else could wait until the dust settled. By the end of the week, I was out of there. The house stood behind me, stripped and silent, a monument to everything we built and lost. No more shared bed. No more shared life. I walked away without looking back, my keys jangling in my pocket, feeling more alone than ever, but more free than I'd felt in years. Sometimes, starting over means burning every bridge behind you. Sometimes, it just means changing the locks and taking the dog. Either way, I was done living for a ghost. By now, the adrenaline had worn off, and all that was left was a kind of ice-cold resolve. I was done playing the fool, done keeping the peace. The only thing left to do was make sure Jenny couldn't drag me back into her mess, no matter how many tears she managed to squeeze out. The calls started coming in on my first night in the new apartment. Jenny's number, over and over. I didn't answer at first. I didn't trust myself not to yell, or worse, to cave. But the voicemails stacked up. "Eric, please. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just want to talk. Please call me. I'm lost without you." The last one was almost all sobs. It almost got me almost. But after what I'd seen, no way. That trust was gone for good. I finally picked up the next evening, just to end it. I kept my voice flat as concrete. "Jenny, this isn't going to work. I know everything. I saw the texts. I saw the videos. Don't call again." She begged and pleaded, her voice trembling. "Eric, I'm begging you. Just talk to me. I was stupid. I know that now. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me like this." I waited for the old ache, the urge to comfort her, to pass. It did. I told her, "You'll be fine. I suggest you figure things out on your own." She tried to guilt me, to remind me of our years together, but I kept it short. "There's nothing left here for you, Jenny. I wish you luck." Then I hung up and blocked her number. Maybe it was heartless, but I wasn't going to play emotional hostage for someone who'd spent the whole vacation turning our life into a bad punchline. The truth is, by then, my plan was already set. I'd helped her enough, closed every account, canceled every credit card, left not a penny in reach. And I made sure, through a little friendly advice to her parents, that they'd be busy and out of town when she came back. She was on her own. For the final act, I put my skills to work. I'd already drained the pool and shut off the power. But the cherry on top? I took apart the hot water heater, half dismantled the stove, and unscrewed all the cabinet doors. The house looked normal at first glance, but as soon as Jenny tried to settle in, she'd realize nothing worked. Not the lights, not the kitchen, not even the AC. The place was technically standing, but about as livable as a tent in a thunderstorm. I left a single note taped to the fridge. "You wanted a new start. Here it is. Good luck, Jenny. Eric." By the time her taxi pulled up at our old place, I was already miles away. Keys dropped off with the realtor, my phone switched off. She'd have a roof, sure. But comfort, safety, the illusion of our home, that was gone, and so was I. Some folks say revenge eats you alive, but I'll tell you, sometimes closing the door on your past is the only way to let any new light in. It's funny, starting over isn't as dramatic as they show in the movies. There's no thunderclap, no string music as you drive away from your old life. Most of it's paperwork, heavy boxes, and awkward first days in a city where nobody knows your name. Dallas was never part of the plan, but after everything, it sounded as good as anywhere. I found a garage for rent, nothing fancy, but clean enough, with enough space for a lift, a set of tools, and maybe one good radio. Business came slow at first, but word gets around. You treat people fair, fix things right, and you earn your keep. Sometimes, in the quiet after hours, I think about Jenny. I heard through the grapevine she ended up with a kid, but not Mennonite, unless biology works miracles. She told everyone I abandoned her, left her in a house with nothing, spun the story her way, as people like her do. But the truth has a way of leaking out. Turns out, you can only fool folks for so long. As for Criswell, poetic justice has its own timing. Apparently, more than a few husbands saw those videos I sent, and Chris got to meet the business end of their outrage. He moved out of state, rumor has it. Maybe next time he'll think twice before hitting send. People ask me if I regret it, if I do anything different. Sometimes, I think about what might have happened if I just let things slide, patched up, played dumb for the sake of comfort. But that's not living, that's just waiting for the next betrayal. I still get those odd pangs of nostalgia driving home at dusk, catching the scent of Jenny's old perfume on someone else in the grocery store. It's not bitterness, exactly. Just a reminder, a little scar tissue where trust used to be. But then I close up shop for the night, count the cash, and sit on my little back porch, listening to the hum of a Texas evening. It's not perfect, but it's mine, every bit of it. No secrets, no games, no half-truths or missing wallets. Just peace, with a side of sarcasm for flavor. Freedom isn't always glamorous. Sometimes it's lonely, sometimes it's a little sad. But I'll take honest loneliness over a pretty lie any day. That's what I've learned. In the end, the only thing worse than losing everything is losing yourself. And me? I'm still standing, a little wiser, a lot more stubborn, and for the first time in years free.